Alright guys, welcome back to Health and Fitness The Truth. I'm Christopher McGee. And in this video, we're going to start going over some options of how to use these loop resistance bands for some upper body exercises you could do sitting in a chair at work. Let's check them out. Alright guys, let's go over a few of the exercises we could do with one of these resistance loops. I'll give you a few. They're all going to be upper body in this video. And I'm going to refer you right now back to the first video I made to this end of things you could do at work to stay in better shape and to not gain unhealthy weight. Because those things are going to come into play with these exercises that we're going to do. So thing number one was to stand whenever possible. If you could stand when doing these exercises, if you can stand when doing a majority of exercises, it gives you an advantage because just the way you root your feet into the ground, the way you ground your feet into the floor, just instinctively even, kicks on a few more muscles and sets your body and your posture up for just more advantageous movement. The other thing was to keep your shoulders back and down. And it's going to be a classic necessity throughout just about every lift or resistance exercise that you can do. And the last one, or rather the third one, because 4 and 5 were about what you eat and drink at work. But the third one was static muscle contractions. You'll see that in some of the movements, if you'll remember, static muscle contractions are contractions where you hold a muscle tight but joints aren't moving. We talked about how you could do that with your abs and your glutes and your quads. And some of these workout options with the loop, some muscles have to contract statically while other muscles are moving in a dynamic way. So let's check some of these out. Let's go over some bicep curls first. Okay, bicep curls. If you got one of these, we've got a few options, okay? And your options are going to depend largely on a combination of how strong you are already and how much resistance can be applied through the band. If you've got a lightly resistant band, you'll need to generate more resistance by how far away your anchor point is from how you're pulling. I'll explain. So if we've got a super heavy one, just anchoring it against my thigh right here might be enough. Now, that means I'm starting with my arm already bent a little bit. Classically, I'd start a bicep curl with my arm at full extension. But if I've only got really heavy resistance loops, and if I put it all the way down to the ground, right, I could just step on it and curl it up, but if it's just too heavy for that, then that's not an option, which means you're gonna have to anchor it somewhere higher, like my thigh. And you could bunch it up and anchor it right next to your thigh, and then your arm would get a little bit straighter, and here's the bicep curl, just pulling it straight up. So I could anchor it right against my thigh, or like we said, we could just step on it, right? And that would give us a more full range of motion. Now, if you could do this standing, it'd be even better. But of course, if this thing's a really heavy resistance band, and this one I've got is, and I'm worried I'm gonna snap this thing, you can see that's a heavy resistance and my arm is getting plenty of work, and it's not, I'm kind of worried about pulling it any more than that. So this one's too heavy, too much resistance for me to pull if I'm all the way upright. But I could anchor it against my hip and pull it from here standing. So options. Shoulders back and down, guys, is huge for a bicep curl. If your shoulder is rocked forward like this and you're doing bicep curls, it's compromising some of the musculature that's in your shoulder. Hey look, we got Ozai right here. Now Ozai's scapula are fused, which means that I can't move his scapula in the same way that our scapula move forward and back along the rib cage. But look, there's a muscle that comes right along the top of the spine of the scapula and through this space under the acromion and over the top of the humeral head and comes out onto this lateral side of your humerus. And because it goes through there, if this is shoved forward and you're trying to drive force through your shoulder as you pull up on something, you are going to pinch that muscle up in there, okay? Which is the beginning of rotator cuff problems, because this muscle is one of the 3 rotator cuff muscles that are on the back of your scapula. And it is classically that supraspinatus muscle that sits right there that's the problem child for every rotator cuff muscle injury. So keeping that scapula or your shoulders back and down as you do bicep curls is actually really critical, and that's something that you'll see I point out with great clarity if you were to look at like the barbell bicep curl that I teach on another spot on this channel. Okay, so you've got a few options for bicep curls there, right? If you're seated, you could just anchor it against your thigh and pull it up, or you could step on it and pull it up. Either way, however you're doing it, just make sure that your shoulder is back and down, and that your spine is upright. Let's do the other side of the arm, some tricep extensions. Okay, tricep extensions are gonna be real simple. You could do this standing or seated and it's gonna be exactly the same. You might have a little more room for your arm if you're standing. Take the loop in a hand and anchor it to your opposite shoulder. That'll be easier if you start with both hands in here, but whichever arm is doing the tricep press, your other hand is going to anchor to the crossed shoulder, the contralateral shoulder, okay? I'm gonna keep my arm right at my side. I am gonna keep my shoulders back and down for the same reasons I mentioned in the bicep curl, and I'm just gonna straighten my arm against that resistance. Just like this. And just like any resistance exercise, you don't want to just go through the motions. I don't want to be doing this. I know, right? My cameraman's like, that looks horrid. And he's right. I want to, with control, press against that resistance until the muscle involved as the prime mover, the muscle which is primarily responsible for the movement, which in this case is my tricep, until it is fully contracted. I know it can't go anymore because my elbow locks out. So that's the point I'm trying to get to. And I get to that point and I squeeze and hold it for just a moment, and then I don't let the resistance flop my arm back up. I control it back up. So it'll look like this. If I can do it standing, even better, for all the reasons that I mentioned in the first video to these ends. All right, shoulder external rotation. This one's really simple. I'm just sitting upright, my shoulders back and down. I've got the loop wrapped around my wrist, and I'm just gonna keep my elbows at my side and pull my wrists wide. That is it. Shoulder external rotation. So I pointed out on Ozai here a moment ago, one of those three external rotators, the supraspinatus that sits right on top of this bony prominence on the back of your scapula. The infraspinatus sits right under that bony prominence and comes out to the same spot. And then under that is the teres minor, which covers basically the rest of the space on the back of your scapula and comes out to the same spot. Those three external rotator muscles are critical to the stability and proper mobility of your shoulder. When those get weak, as they do on most people, when we sit like this all day, we set ourselves up for rotator cuff weakness, and thus we set ourselves up for rotator cuff injury. This simple, I'll do it standing now, this simple external rotation of the shoulder, and it's important that for this to be isolated as an external rotation exercise, that I keep my elbows at my side, okay? Okay, so let's just do 3 more, but I'm gonna put them all as one because they're all working the same muscle, just different branches of that muscle. And that muscle is your deltoid, which is the cap of muscle that sits on top of your shoulder here. On the anterior branch, we're gonna step on this again, but actually we're gonna bring it all the way up the leg, and we're sitting on it. And for this anterior branch, you can just shoulders back and down, torso upright. I'm just keeping my arms straight and just bringing my arms straight up against the resistance of the loop. That's it. If I wanted to go sideways, I would need a chair that didn't have arms on it, or I could just stand, right? But if I'm sitting, I'll need to turn a little bit and just go straight out to the side. Again, this is a really, what is this? Extra heavy resistance, whatever. So whatever the resistance yours is, you might be, well, stronger than I am, or have a less heavy resistance on your band, to which point you might be able to get your arm further up in this arc, further through that range of motion for the shoulder. That's the movement that it's gonna be, okay? Just straight out from the side. And you can keep it right there on the thigh and go straight back with it, okay? That'll be the posterior deltoid, and some other muscles are kicking in as well in the upper back. Well, let's do that standing really quick. If I were doing this standing, I think I would anchor it to my thigh or my hip with my other hand, and then I would bring it forward or out wide or back. But there you go. All right, there you have it. Some biceps, some triceps, some shoulder. Alright guys, and there's some options for you. Make sure you share that if you know anybody that it would be helpful for, anybody that has a desk job that might be willing to use one of these. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you stay up to date on all the good things we're putting out here on Health and Fitness The Truth. And remember, you can follow me on Instagram at Health Fitness Truth. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments. Peace.